John Dillinger's face didn't even have time to cool before it became public property. Chicago, the 22nd of July, 1934. The moment Dillinger's body hit the sidewalk, the crowd hit him. In an instant, blood pooled beneath his head, turning tacky in the summer heat, glass and dirt scraping into the sticky red as dozens of shoes swarmed. Some people just stared, frozen in shock or morbid curiosity. Others, braver or maybe just greedier, leaned in, elbowing each other to dip handkerchiefs in his blood, jostling for a souvenir from the country's most wanted corpse. If you've ever doubted America's taste for a legend's last breath, this right here was proof. A murder scene doubling as a blood drive. A dead outlaw instantly recast as a relic. The myth says Dillinger's death was dignified, cinematic, the end of an era, a legend going out in style. The truth, it was absolute chaos, and not just on the curb. As soon as the crowd grabbed their bloodied mementos and the sidewalk was hosed off, a new crew moved in. Morticians, police, and a handful of guys lugging a bucket of plaster. Dillinger wasn't just being buried. His face was about to be pressed into immortality in the most literal and physically awkward way you can imagine. So here's the question at the heart of this story. How do you immortalize America's most hunted man while he's still leaking blood, his wounds raw and skin swollen, in a back room that feels part morgue, part public spectacle? And why were so many Americans obsessed with getting every detail, every bruise, every bullet hole turned into a keepsake? Let's set the scene. Down the block, the Biograph Theater's neon is buzzing in the night. But inside the Undertaker's, the lighting is harsh and chemical, more surgical slab than movie set. Dillinger's body, barely an hour dead, lies flopped on a metal table, shirt soaked through, face already swelling where the gunshots ended his run. There's a bullet hole just under his right eye, another wound near the base of his neck. If you were hoping for a peaceful, waxen legend, this face tells a different story. A chase ending in hot lead and public chaos, not Hollywood glamour. Privacy? Forget it. Reporters bang on the glass. The crowd still swarms the doors, desperate for another look, maybe a button, a shoe, a lock of hair. Inside, the morticians don't have time to breathe. The clock's ticking. The body is still warm, but won't be for long. If they're going to make a real three-dimensional death mask, capturing every pore, every wound, every rough surgical scar, they have to hustle. And if you're picturing a gentle clean-up first, you're giving them way too much credit. This is 1,934, and dignity isn't on the checklist. Speed is. There's barely time to dab at the worst of the blood, let alone disinfect the wounds or arrange the face for posterity. The gunshot wounds are still open, oozing into dried rivers and sticky patches. The plaster is about to go straight onto all of it. Now the practical problems start, and the reality of outlaw celebrity comes into focus. Making a death mask is never elegant. It's a race against decomposition, a battle with gravity, and in this case, a struggle with fresh trauma that makes even the morticians wince. Dillinger's skin is clammy, color already fading. The bullet wounds gape, edges jaggedy. The scars from his amateur plastic surgery, meant to keep him unrecognizable, will be immortalized right alongside the wounds. The morticians don't have much. A bucket, a crude paddle, a heap of plaster to be mixed by hand. No surgical precision, just sweat, nerves, and the crowd's pressure seeping in through the walls. You want stress? Try molding a face while a mob and half the city's reporters pound outside, hoping to see something legendary. Let's pause for a second. If you've ever complained about a messy DIY face mask at home, you've got nothing on this. Imagine smearing gritty, half-set goo onto a face that's still bleeding. Reporters are jostling for a peek. Souvenir hunters are pounding on the door. This isn't solemn Hollywood artistry. It's sweaty, frantic, and barely under control. The bucket fills, the powder goes in, the air sharpens with chemical tang and the metallic scent of blood. The faster the morticians mix, the lumpier the plaster gets. No time to let it cool. The corpse's face is still warm, swelling by the minute. Delay, and the mask captures not just the wounds, but the first hints of decay. And the first real medical issue, blood, everywhere. Pooling in wounds, seeping onto the slab, streaking the mortician's hands as they try to smooth the first slab of plaster over Dillinger's forehead. Plaster and fresh blood don't make a clean cast. They make a pink, sticky mess that gets into every crease, every wound, oozing and sticking and turning the mask in progress a grisly shade of pink. Outside, the crowd grows louder, hungry for news, for proof, for a piece of the action. But inside, every awkward slap of plaster is another step away from humanity. Dillinger's body slipping further from person to artifact, from flesh and blood outlaw to permanent legend, sealed in a mask that captures every ugly, awkward, and very public detail. And that's just the beginning. The morticians don't get a minute's peace. Every bang on the door, every shout from outside, is a reminder that this isn't a reverent memorial. It's a race with rot, a tug-of-war with the crowd's curiosity, and a struggle with a body that's changing by the minute. Under their hands, Dillinger is already losing what made him famous. The skin goes pale, lips slacken. That iconic jawline softens under the relentless creep of post-mortem change. There's no way to clean him up properly. The wounds on his face and neck still seep, sticky blood caking into his hair. Every time the morticians dab with a rag, it comes away streaked with red and white, a horror show of blood and half-dried plaster dust. They use whatever passes for disinfectant, probably cheap spirits, sharp enough to sting the living, just adding another layer to the stifling, fetid air. Time is the enemy. Within the first hour, features start to bloat, eyes sink, skin tightens. Wait too long, and you're not casting public enemy number one, you're casting a waxy, anonymous corpse. Move too fast, and you get blood in every crevice. There's no perfect window, just a mad scramble to catch a legend before he physically unravels. And the process itself, rough, rushed, and about as far from movie myth as you can get. The morticians slap handfuls of thick, lumpy plaster onto Dillinger's forehead, work it down over his brows, eyelids, the bridge of that nose that once graced wanted posters. They press it into the hollows of his cheeks, over his lips, around bullet wounds still leaking, every press and poke drawing more blood, instantly turning the mask a gruesome pink. There's an awkward pause. They need an airway to keep the mold from collapsing, so someone fumbles a splintered stick or bit of wax paper into Dillinger's nostril. It's not for his comfort, just so the mask doesn't ruin itself. But the result is almost comic. America's most wanted outlaw, now with a makeshift straw jammed up his nose, all for the sake of posterity. Not exactly the image you get on a movie poster. As the morticians press their palms into the setting plaster, smoothing it over his chin, his jaw, his surgery scars. You can't ignore the wet, slurping sound of blood escaping beneath the edge of the mold. The death mask isn't just picking up the dignified planes of a famous face, it's capturing swelling, torn flesh, and every failed attempt at disguise. If you want the unvarnished portrait of outlaw life and death, here it is, down to the last swollen eyelid and crusted wound. Meanwhile, outside, the crowd is at fever pitch. You can hear them chanting, desperate for a glimpse or a memento. Inside, the air is thick, blood, wet, plaster, sweat, and a faint whiff of cheap aftershave that does nothing but add to the stew. It's tempting to joke, not your average beauty routine, but really, there's no one here laughing. If the mask fails, if it cracks or slides, they'll have to start over, and who knows if the crowd will even let them try again. Plaster runs down the sides of Dillinger's head, mixing with blood, pooling at his ears. He attempts to wipe it away, just smear the mess further, leaving the whole setup looking like a macabre art project gone wrong. Every so often, a fist pounds on the door, anxiety spikes, and the pressure ratchets up another notch. Behind the slapstick, buckets tipping, plaster hardening too fast, hands flicking blood off cuffs. There's a real horror to this job. Dillinger, who lived on escape and speed, is now reduced to a limp shape in the hands of men desperate to capture his face as both trophy and historical record. Even unfinished, the mask looks nothing like a legend or monument. It's puffy, streaked, and brutally honest about what bullets and panic do to human flesh. As the plaster finally starts to set, the morticians step back, panting, hands caked in a mess of fluids and dust. Somewhere outside, a flash bulb pops. Someone's gotten a blurry shot through the window. With each second, Dillinger's transformation from man to legend gets more grotesque, more permanent, and a whole lot more public. But the weirdest part is still ahead. This mask isn't just for history buffs or movie props. It's about to become the most physically intimate, undignified artifact in outlaw history, with every wound, every scar, every indignity set in cold plaster for a country that cannot look away. When the plaster hardens, finally, there's a tense pause. No one's holding their breath out of respect. The air smells bad enough already. A mask maker slides fingers under the edge and begins to pry. The mold clings to every crevice, every hair, every jagged bit of bullet wound. As they peel it away, there's a sticky, sucking sound, bits of hair and even some skin coming with it, blood seeping around the edge. For a split second, there's silence, no one sure whether to be proud or disgusted. Then the mask is held up, swollen, pocked, with every scar and bullet hole in perfect, merciless relief. No movie ever made it look this real. You see the exit wound, the lines from failed plastic surgery, and the slack jaw that will never smirk for the press again. It's not a legend's face. It's just a battered, very human one, frozen at the instant. All his running finally stopped. Suddenly, the mask itself becomes the story. Reporters snap photos, onlookers crane for a look. Some whisper, "It doesn't even look like him," or "That's not the face from the papers." But that's the point. The mask is Dillinger, as he was at the end, beaten, bloodied, stripped of legend. People want a piece of that reality. Some even try to bribe their way in for a touch, a fragment. The mask will be displayed, copied, and passed around like a grim trophy, proof that public enemy number one was as mortal as anybody. And the punchline, the mask, far from a dignified relic, is almost cartoonish in how raw it is. It's hard to look at without flinching. No smoothing, no effort to make Dillinger seem heroic or tragic, just an unvarnished death face, every imperfection captured in rough plaster. If you ever see it in a museum, look close. It records not just bone structure, but wounds, torn skin, and the violence stamped onto a body that never got to rest. The crowd outside, still clawing for souvenirs, isn't just a backdrop. They're part of the story. Dillinger's myth wasn't ended by a bullet as much as by what happened after. His corpse turned into public property, prodded, handled, cast, and displayed before the story was even cold. He didn't get a quiet fade out. He got immortalized at his most vulnerable, with strangers arguing over who got the next piece. That's the strange power of a death mask. It isn't just a historical souvenir. It's a snapshot of how America processes crime, celebrity, and mortality. Not with reverence, but with hungry, hands-on curiosity. The mask isn't a monument to Dillinger's life. It's a record of his loss of control, the country's refusal to let go, and the truth that, in the end, even an outlaw's flesh could be pressed, peeled, and passed around. So next time you see a photo of Dillinger's death mask, or hear someone talk about the legend, remember what's actually captured there. Not the grinning anti-hero of Hollywood, but a body caught mid-fall, wounds and all, immortalized by a country that just couldn't look away. America never let him rest. It just pressed him deeper into memory, flaws first. If you want more American outlaw history that doesn't clean up the blood, hit subscribe. We'll keep peeling back the layers, warts, wounds, indignities, and all, until the legends look a little less bulletproof.